Sony's press conference at E3 is always one of the most highly anticipated showcases of the event. This year, they did the showcase a little bit differently. They moved locations right off the bat, in an attempt to distinct the personalities of each games that they featured. In case you missed it, here are all the highlights that you need to know about. From The Last of Us Part 2 to Death Stranding to Spider-Man. Everything that you missed at the Sony showcase at E3 2018. Perhaps the most highly anticipated game of the last several years is Naughty Dog's blockbuster hit game, The Last of Us Part 2. So naturally that's what Sony started their conference with. Set in a big church tent with lights strung up above the audience. Last E3 we got some hints as to what to expect. New characters, a possible revenge plot, and an older Ellie. And this year we got some much needed answers. But we were also left with a few questions, even though we now have a whole lot more content to gush over. The preview started with the cinematic of Ellie at a gathering under a church tent, just like the one at the conference. We were introduced to one of her friends who Joel seems to be giving a hard time to. We also got a whole lot of sexual tension courtesy Ellie's new love interest, a young woman who she dances with and kisses her after a bit of a flirty banter. The kiss then transitioned into Ellie slitting an enemy's throat. Whoa. Bringing us into some stellar gameplay that heavily featured a combination of stealth and melee combat. There are a few new advancements that were showcased. Archery combat is now more complex, allowing for better control over your bow and arrows. There also appears to be advancements when it comes to stealth, and how Ellie can make use of the environment to hide better. In the gameplay footage, Ellie navigates her way through a marsh, a parking garage, and then an abandoned store, with the gameplay ending off with her brutally stabbing a foe in the throat. The gameplay then transitions back into the kiss from the cinematic. And of course, no release date was announced. The next game showcase started off with another musical performance setting the tone for the preview, leading into some amazing gameplay of the Ghost of Tsushima, another title that we all knew would be making an appearance. And oh boy, did it show up. Set in 1274, the footage we saw took place during the Mongol invasion of the island of Tsushima. The gameplay showed us some combat before having the player character meet up with an ally named Masako, who by the end of the trailer turns on the protagonist. This leads to more combat, and a superbly beautiful sword fight, with the two ending their conflict for the sake of taking on the horde of approaching Mongol forces. No release date was announced for this title either. Next up was a trailer for Control, a surreal psychological thriller from Remedy and 505 Games, set to come out in 2019. Not much was revealed. We know you play as a female protagonist, you have a shape-shifting gun, and it appears that you have telekinetic powers. Resident Evil 2 was also announced, featuring a trailer that begun from the perspective of a rat, who then gets crushed as a zombie devours its victim next to it, only to be shot by a very familiar face. The game will be available on January 25th, 2019, with pre-order available today. Next up was Death Stranding. Hideo Kojima's latest sci-fi game has been shrouded in mystery, but we do know that it appears to be about life and death, set in an open world filled with Lovecraftian monsters, and stars Norman Reedus as a character named Sam. The trailer at this year's conference gave us much more than last year's. More questions, that is. Sam appears to be some sort of delivery man, and we got a lot of what was presumed to be gameplay footage of him crossing various locales carrying presumably boxes of equipment. The invisible creature made another appearance, with Reedus joined by character played by Leah Seydoux, silently standing still as the creature moved around them inside of a cave. Everything else was a giant mystery, a massive, incredibly compelling mystery that is, and of course no release date was announced. This year's Spider-Man reveal was almost entirely gameplay footage. We joined Peter Parker racing through the Raft, the supervillain prison, chasing after Electro, who frees everyone inside. This just so happens to include a bunch of Spider-Man's greatest foes, including Vulture, Rhino, and Scorpion. Mr. Negative also popped up again. You'll remember him from the previous Spider-Man trailer. We got a better glimpse at some combat mechanics, Peter's Spidey sense, and a cliffhanger. Spider-Man gets the crap beaten out of him, only to look up and say, "Wait, you?" Spider-Man, unlike all the other major games that appeared at this conference, did get a release date, and it's September 7th of this year. Let's move on to some additional highlights. The conference primarily focused on the big upcoming games that have been hinted to over the past 2 years, but in case you missed PlayStation's lead up to E3, several new titles were also announced. Tetris Effect, another trailer for Days Gone, the psychological game Twin Mirror, the adorable Ghost Giant, and the PlayStation VR game Beat Saber. Days Gone was one of the big titles announced at last year's E3 and is expected to be released this year. What else? Well, the Destiny 2 DLC Forsaken is coming out September 4th, 2018. Back in Black Maps was announced for Call of Duty. PlayStation Plus members can actually get Black Ops 3 for free tonight. Trover Saves the Universe was announced from Squanch Games and Justin Roiland, one of the creators of Rick and Morty. Another Kingdom Hearts 3 trailer debuted, revealing more characters, this time from Pirates of the Caribbean. And a Nihon 2 trailer also popped up, but we didn't really get a lot of details. Alright, there we have it guys. For all E3 2018 highlights, updates, and news, be sure to subscribe to Top 10 Gaming. Thanks for watching.